Hey, good morning. My name is Paul Scottberg, and I'd like you to see my 1978 Macho TA convertible, number 97. Car
Okay, wait. I'm sorry, Paul. Real quick. 78.
Yep.
That's not a 78 front end.
No, that's not. It's a 73 front end. Uh, yeah, 78 Macho TA convertible. I put a 73 front end in it, and I've got a 79 back end on it. I'll walk around and I'll show you some of the things we did to modify it over the years. I bought this in 1980. It's a 78, like I said. It was produced in the Van Nuys, California production facility. It had 14,000 miles when I purchased it. I'm the second owner of it here in 2025. The Macho paint scheme is similar, is exactly the way this is, like this. They put the stripe right up the top, bird on the front. It came with a Macho TA decal up on the windshield that we did.
Well, give me a second here. Macho. What is Macho, and who were they with this car, and what is a Macho Trans Am?
Good question. A Macho TA was developed by Dennis and Kyle Meacham. Their father, Evan, was the governor of Arizona, and he owned Meacham Pontiac in Glendale, Arizona. So there was all, horsepower was coming down, gas mileage were having issues. So Dennis and Kyle, the two brothers, decided they wanted to take a Trans Am and fine tune it and increase the performance on it. So they did a number of things. They retuned the carburetor, redid the distributor, took off the Delco shocks, put on conies, lowered the front end, had the paint scheme package. So they did that type of a thing to enhance the performance of the vehicle. They bought the car from their father's Glendale Pontiac dealership, and then they performed all the modifications, and then they would sell it as a used car to any Pontiac dealer anywhere in the country. So you could go to any Pontiac dealer and order a Macho TA. In 77, they did about a dozen of them. 1978, they did 204. This is number 97. And 1979, they did 96. And then they did not do any in 80 or 81. And then they started again in 82 with the new body style. And they called them MSCs, or Motorsports Editions.
Okay, you're missing something here, and it's your top.
Yes.
Was that part of the Macho TA conversion?
No, the convertible is totally separate from the Macho TA. In the mid to late 70s, there was a company in Port Sanilac, Michigan that stretched limousines. They did one-of cars. They did a hunting car for a Saudi Arabian prince. And they got the idea that they wanted to do Camaro and Firebird convertibles. So what they did is they engineered it, figured out how to do it so it was structurally sound. And then what they did is you would go to a Pontiac dealership starting in 1979. You'd order a car with any option you wanted. And then what you do is you check off the convertible option. And then they would send it up to Port Sanilac. They would take about 2 weeks to get the car done. And then 2 weeks later, they ship it back to the dealer and you pick the car up. They've done Z28s, they've done Camaros, Firebirds, and the Trans Ams. They think there's about 250 made. The Facebook group that I belong to on these convertibles has only found up to about 187.
So they completely designed and engineered a soft top for this car, which is more than just chopping the top and adding the soft cover. What did they do structurally to make sure this car could last?
They did all sorts of things to stiffen up the suspension. We have subframe connectors underneath, and when they cut the top off, right here they put contoured steel that goes from here, wraps all the way around to the other door handle, and strengthens that all up. The car weighs somewhere in the neighborhood of about 250 pounds more than your standard Trans Am when it comes off the dealership.
Okay, so they did think about the longevity of it. They added the structure. It just wasn't looks. They actually engineered it through.
Oh, think about it. This car is about 47 years old now, and it rides down the street like there is no tomorrow. I mean, they've done an excellent job in figuring out how to engineer that.
Okay. Back to Macho then, with the 6.6 under the hood, you said they did a few modifications there as well.
Yep, they rebuilt the carburetor. They tuned the distributor. They actually took the exhaust system that was on the car, took that totally off. They put hooker headers on. Then what they did, instead of having the typical exhaust system come from the engine down to a single catalytic converter and then out to dual spitters, they actually ran the hooker headers and single pipes on each side and had dual catalytic converters out to the back.
Okay. So, but nothing on the internals, no cam or...
No, nothing on the internal of the engine. Yeah, that was all standard, just the way the car came from the factory.
Pontiac had already done a pretty good job of that.
Yes, they did.
What kind of horsepower then? Because again, this is 78, so we know the 70s were called kind of stripe performance. They were so gutted from the gas EPA regulations. What kind of...
Yeah, in 78, you either had the 6.0 or the 6.6. The 6.0, I believe, had about 200 horse, and the 6.6, if I remember correctly, was around 220. And then they didn't tell us when you bought a Macho what the horsepower increased when they did it. Now, I've had this car redone in 23, total restoration all the way up. And we put a mild thumper cam in it. And we rebuilt, put a brand new 4-barrel carburetor on it. So this probably puts a few additional horse on top of that. I'm not overly concerned about how much horsepower. It runs great. I can get on it and it moves.
Hey, this is a looker, a stunner, and a highway cruiser. You put that top down, you're not going for top speed. You're going for reliability and cruisability.
Exactly.
Oh, and you got it in spades here, I got to tell you. Now, on top of all that, when you bought the car, it wasn't red.
No, when I originally bought it, it was solar gold and Brentwood brown. And I decided that, solar gold wasn't my favorite color. So when I saw the convertible for the first time in Motor Trend in 1979 in the August issue, they had a white Z28 convertible and they had a red Trans Am convertible. And as soon as I saw that red Trans Am, I just fell in love. So I decided it was when I needed to repaint it because of the mileage and stuff I put on the car. Actually, in 2023, when I took this in to get a real major restoration done, I had over 160,000 miles on this car. So I take my cars and I like to drive them. I don't like to sit and park them. I got this car back from the restoration, and 5 days after I got back from a 12-month restoration, I drove 5,000 miles on a round-trip car show on the Bandit Run.
Holy cow. Okay. So they're not trailer queens.
No, not at all. I drive these things.
Wow. Okay. Well then, so then part of the Macho treatment for go back to the stripes, the side stripes along the lower rocker panel, those were factory?
Yep, that's all Macho. That was part of their performance package. Now what I did additionally is back in the mid to late 70s, there was a company that sold aftermarket parts. There was a lot of aftermarket things going on for Trans Ams. They used to have the louvered windows for the back, the 80s type of thing. What happened is they sold a side skirt that would bolt on, and they had a rear spoiler that would bolt on. So instead of the car kind of curving under like it normally does, this has it come out slightly on an angle. Now, rather than bolted on, what I did is I wanted those to be molded in to give it a much, much smoother look. So that's why that's all smoothed in. Additionally, the front and rear tire spoilers, they typically have a vinyl strip on here where they're connected. I had that all molded in. The air extractors on the front fenders on both sides have been molded in.
These are the little nuances on this car that really... as you walk by, you're like, well, yeah, that's there. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I remember that. But no, stop and take a look. You've done an excellent job of molding these in because, as we said, that front spoiler, the rear in front of the, on the rear quarter panel in front of the tire, those were all, they had a little gap and they had a little strip that connected those, and they just looked tacked on.
Yep.
These don't, and I'm hoping this comes across in the camera, folks, because this is so very well done. Again, then Macho with the black stripe and everything, and the screaming, I guess, is that still a screaming chicken? Or
yeah, I think that's what they call it.
Okay. But the black treatment, and then all the way around.
Yep, we shaved the door handles as well.
Look at that. Yep, yep.
So again, to give that smooth look. And then here's a real major change.
Okay, hold on just a minute. I want to make sure I get this framed in exactly right because, all right, go ahead, talk to me, folks. What do you think you see there?
So here's a real major change that I did. What we did is we welded the trunk in, and then of course we had to put some Bondo in to make sure it was smooth and put it together. And the whole thing is now like a vet back end. This is actually from a Corvette. So this is a Corvette gas cap. And what I did is I just simply added that on, got a Trans Am decal, put that on, and now everything looks like it's smooth and molded in all the way from front to back to sides.
I want you folks to look at this and see absolutely how clean this is. Now, you might look at it and think, well, yeah, that's the way they came. No, it's not. Look at how well this is all integrated in and sealed up. Look at that.
Yeah, there was a lot of work that had to be done in order to take the three-piece rear spoiler and make sure it was all molded in and straight and smooth all the way through.
And then it's a different rear end as well.
And again,
it's a 79.
I think we mentioned that. It was a 73 front end and a 79 back end. I felt like the 79 back end here, taillight section, was what would work best with a smoothed out trunk area.
Because it was all one panel across that made that
Exactly.
smooth look in there. It
Yep.
gave it that look.
Try to keep consistency with the smoothness and the straightness of the taillight section.
Right.
Oh, and then since the trunk has been molded in, you know, people will ask me, well, you know, what do you do? How's the trunk work? Well, when I first had the top done, when the top comes up, you have room between here and here to get in there and, you know, reach in, put a few things in. As I've gotten older, it's been more difficult. So when I had the car redone, this is actually now a fold down back seat. So this whole seat will actually fold down and I have total access to it. In a typical hardtop, you open up your door and your dome light goes on. I've got my dome light in the trunk. So at nighttime, if I need to get in there, I open my door, the dome light in the trunk goes open, and I've got all the visibility and everything I've done. So I tried to think of some of those little things as we were putting the car together.
Now, you were telling me a story about when they, was it for the Macho or was it for the convertible too, that one of the Motor Trend guys was testing it and driving it around?
There was an August issue of 1979 where the Motor Trend author had an article on the convertible, and he chose the red one to drive as opposed to the Z28. And he picked it up, he went down the street, and he pulls up to a light, and a guy in a brand new Corvette shows up and looks over and has this stunned look on his face and quickly faces forward and tries not to look like he's interested. And the light turns green and they both proceed, and luck would have it, they both end up at the next light sitting next to each other. The guy in the Corvette looks over and says, "I'll give you my car and $5,000 for yours." So that just further kind of encouraged me. You know, I was already, you know, infatuated with the red car on the cover of the magazine. And you hear those kind of explanation points and people, you know, all excited about the car. So I knew that that's what I had to do. And again, I was fortunate. The convertibles didn't start getting made until 1979. Now, this was a 78, like I said. I bought it with 14,000 miles. I called the company that did the conversions, and I talked with them, and I said, hey, would you be interested in doing a 78? It's a used car, and it only has 14,000 miles. And they said, sure. So I drove the car up. I spent 3 days with them. I helped them gut the car, watched them chop the top off, which made me think that I do the right thing when I saw that. And then I went home on the Greyhound bus from Michigan down to Chicago suburbs. And then 2 weeks later, they gave me a phone call and said, hey, come pick your car up. So I took the Greyhound back up, picked my car up, and I drove it home. And so this is, as far as I know, the only 1978 Trans Am that has ever been converted into a convertible. And Macho is probably the only Macho TA that has ever been converted into a convertible.
Well, that's what I was going to ask about. So this is one of one. This is super rare. I mean, wow, to have all the modifications and everything. And then you've done the things on top of that.
Correct.
Wow. So what's gone on with the interior? Anything that did Macho do anything about with the interior or DKM? Anybody?
No, the only thing DKM is they gave you an ID plate, which is there on the console. Okay. and which identifies you as one of the macho cars.
Okay. And is there a registry then, an active registry for this, or a Facebook page, or anything like
There
that?
are a number of guys, I think, that have tried to put some things together. I'm not sure if there's anything that is, concrete. There's a 77.
Keep stepping
There's
on
a
that.
77, 78 Macho TA page on Facebook. There's also a National Coach Engineering, which is the company that did the convertible. They have a Facebook page where we'll put our pictures up and post things about what's going on with our cars, what's going on, what's happening.
Okay, so we've established that you drive your car. You drive it a lot. They're not trailer queens. So people walk up to your car at car shows, they look at it, they're like, yeah, this is a 73. But then as they start walking around, do you really absolutely confuse them?
Pretty much so. There's a pretty wide range of reactions to this car. If you're a car person, you immediately walk up and start noticing things. To your point, you walk up and see it's a 73. Drastically, because the top is gone, that's probably the first thing they notice.
Right.
And because they notice the top is gone, then they look at a 73 and they say, something's not right.
Right.
And then as they continue to walk around the car, they'll see it's a 79. That will further confuse them. And some do and some don't notice the trunk that's been molded in and closed in. But those are, I'd say car people reactions.
Right.
And then you get people who are like the cars. They're not really into it.
Right.
And they just walk around and scratch their head.
Gotcha.
They just don't understand what it is, that this doesn't make sense. I don't understand why that's there. And then you get the people who are not necessarily into cars, but they like to go to car shows.
Right.
And they are just those are some of the best people to talk to.
Sure.
Because they just think the car is great looking, they like it, it attracts them, to the car. And especially if you're a convertible enthusiast,
Right.
then of course, you're gravitated to it pretty closely. Yeah, I was at a show a couple weeks ago and two guys came up and we spent a considerable amount of time walking around the car and looking at all the details. And just before they left, they said, both of us are car guys and we've been interested in cars for 35 years and more. And I have never, ever in my life saw a convertible second-gen Trans Am. So, I think the more that this is out, the more that individuals like yourself that can, show off this car, it'll make an awareness that these cars are out there.
Wow. Boy, she's all dressed up and ready to go. Look at that whole front end there, the whole accessory drive unit.
Yeah, we put a CVC runner on it. Couple of things too, we put this on here just to cover this all up and kind of fill that up.
Yep.
And typically you have a big gap right in here. Yep. But we put this in here just to cover it up, give it a nicer look. The guys that did this, CC Restorations out in Winter Haven, they were phenomenal to work with. They kept you updated, let me know what's going on. They call me up and say, hey, we're doing this and this. Did you think about this? Right. So we talk about it. They actually custom made these supports for both sides. A lot of times you can buy them aftermarket and they're chrome. Yeah. They made this, designed it, painted it black, and, in keeping with the engine compartment, color motif.
Yep. No, I like the idea of that because it doesn't distract from the beauty in the middle there.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Now you said that's got a 4-barrel carburetor on it. Is
Yep.
that a Edelbrock or?
Yep,
I see an Edelbrock manifold.
Yep,
So
it is.
Okay.
Yeah, and they sent it out to an engine shop that they work with, and they bored 40 over, so that's going to give it some additional horse. Okay. It's the original engine. The trans is original, and since we had everything out, it didn't make any sense not to rebuild the trans. I wasn't having any issues with it, but it just didn't make any sense not to do that.
Turbo Hydromatic 400 or something like that?
The RH07.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It looks good. It's very well done. It's just right. It's not over the top. It makes you look at it and think, okay, I could have, except for the accessory drive. I mean, that's gorgeous, but pretty much the whole car screams you could have walked into your Pontiac dealer and paid the premium for the extra little doodads on it and driven it home.
Yeah, my goal when I was designing this thing and trying to put it together, and even when I worked with the guys that put the engine together for me, I was trying to do everything kind of subtle. I didn't want to have anything that was so striking and just jumped out at you. My whole thought process was, well, how can I just gently smooth things out and make things subtle? And I think the best part of it is when people can come by and look at the car and they like it, but they don't know what I've done. So that was my goal.
That's a double-edged sword, because
started.
you want people to appreciate all you've done, but they don't quite. But I'm sure then that creates the conversation.
It does.
And you and I talked about this a few minutes ago off camera. It's easy, I think, to keep adding and keep adding and keep adding. It's super hard to be restrained as you've done here, and to make it's all custom, folks. But you would walk up and walk past it and think, oh yeah, well that's just how they came. No, it's not. But you've been able to do that with a resto mod like this, to make it look so original by the little subtle touches you've done that, again, you and I were standing here a few minutes ago and I didn't even notice the door handles were gone. It's like, oh, okay, gotcha. It's so clean. It's so well done. And it's so restrained.
And to your point, I think that's the reaction that I get from non-car people when we go to a show. You know, I mean, everybody likes to look at a really nice car, you know, and everybody has a different taste of what they like. And when people come by here, I know they think it's a nice car. They tell me it's a nice car, but being a non-car person, they have this appreciation for it. And I think that is kind of what you're saying there. And again, if I hadn't tried to do this, I tried to do it subtle. And if I hadn't, it wouldn't have had that effect.
Exactly. And, you know, the purists out there, you know, they're going to be like, well, this isn't the way it came. This isn't the way it came. But yeah, we get that. But you're not trying to present this car as that.
No.
You're presenting it as if I could have walked into my Pontiac dealer and had my dream TA.
Exactly.
What would it have looked like? Boom.
Yep, it's right
there. It is.
Yep. Yeah, you know, I think, you know, we have a car culture in our country, you know, ever since they started building the roads and, you know, across the country and all that. And, you know, I think if you have a car, I just like the idea of being able to make it your own. You know, I see a lot of things on Facebook where somebody will say, well, I want to do this and I want to do that. What do you guys think? And most of the comments are, hey, it's your car and do what you want with it. So I've taken that advice wholeheartedly, and here she is.
You've certainly done it with this car. And yeah.
Well, thank you very much. You know, when you put that kind of work in it, it's always heartening to have people appreciate what you went through and what you had to do.
And you've done a bang-up job with this car. Wow.
Well, thank you again.
Wow. Yeah, you bet. All right, that's it, folks. Hey, thank you so much for watching, and leave some comments down below on what you think about this car. And Paul will be watching the comments. So if you have any questions, just leave them in the comment field, and he'll be watching, and he'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. And that's it, folks. Thanks for watching.